Welcome back, everyone. As usual, we are two dudes talking 80s. I'm John. That's my partner in crime, Lewis.
Hello.
Uh, really bringing the energy today. Wow, thanks. So it can only go up from here. Um, what was up with that?
I hurt my back last time I tried, so I thought I better stand as still as possible this time.
Are you standing or sitting?
Sitting.
Okay, all right. I just want clarification. Yeah, that's what I want. Cool. Anyway, we are back as usual to talk about all things 80s. And this one I'm really looking forward to because we are going to be talking about our time in the 80s, going to amusement parks, going to the county fair, and things like that. So this should be a lot of fun. I was reminiscing and having a good time. Let's start off with the fairs. Of course, Lewis, you like me, pretty much were a San Mateo boy. I'm guessing you only went in the '80s to the San Mateo County Fairgrounds for their for the annual fair.
Pretty much, man. It was just the San Mateo County Fair, and I was just talking to Lulu about this the other day. When we were kids, the fair seemed to last forever. At least from my perspective, it did. And in reality, it's only there for a week.
Well, maybe it is now. It had to be there longer when we were kids. I don't know. Just you're right. It seemed longer, and I'm almost thinking it was. I looked forward to the fair every year. I lived the San Mateo County Fairgrounds were over my rear wall, and I remember when I was young, anytime I'd start to see the rides showing up, and they started building them, I'd be looking over the fence and watching the progression, getting super hyped up for it. So I couldn't wait.
Yeah, there is definitely some magic there, especially at night. I remember always looking forward to, if my parents were driving by to see, the lit up Ferris wheel and all the rides. Even if you weren't going in, it was just sort of exciting to drive by and go, hey, it's there. It's neat.
So I got a couple stories from my time at the San Mateo County Fair, and I don't even remember if I've ever told you this. I think I have, but I'm not quite sure. And you're old, and you probably forgot if I have told you this anyway. So I used to love the games, right? You used to win some cool stuff like, the mirrors. We were talking about offline. We were talking about the mirrors with the bands, on them. I wonder what people use those mirrors for. I'm sure it was all decorative. It was the 80s, and things like that. But I was a poster fanatic. I loved posters. In my room, I had a giant wall in my room, and I just covered with posters on the door, whatever. And in the early 80s, I used to watch Dallas. My mom and I would watch Dallas on, I think it was Thursday or Friday nights. I was
Hmm.
still young. I wasn't like I was going out to parties. So I watched Dallas with my mom, and I was obsessed with Charlene Tilton. Have I told you this story?
I don't think so.
Okay. So I'm walking around with my parents, and you had to pay like $1 or something, and they'd hand you a dart, and you'd throw the dart, and you would get whatever poster you hit. And I'm walking around, and there it is in all its glory, a poster of Charlene Tilton. She was wearing a bikini top. I think the top was open, so the strings were holding down, they're still covering her. Oh my God, I've got to get that poster. I've got to, ask my parents, hey, for some money, because I didn't have any. And my mom or dad gives the money, and the guy hands me a beanbag. I grab that beanbag, bam, and I bounce it off the Charlene Tilton poster. The booth is actually rocking. My dad turns to me and goes, "What the hell are you doing? You were supposed to throw it in the basket and then tell them which poster you wanted." I noticed my mother starts walking off like, I don't know whose kid this is. Like, she's taking no ownership for me at that point in time. But because everything I had seen was you threw the dart, I just said, okay, it's something else. I throw the beanbag. And even the carney was like, oh my God, like this is a special needs kid. Let's get him out of here. Just give him whatever poster he wants. And the guy's like, no, yeah, you're supposed to throw it in the basket and then tell me. I'm like, oops. Like, my mom was like, I thought you were going to knock that whole booth down. You threw that thing so hard. And yeah, and then I got the Charlene Tilton poster.
That's priceless, man. That's freaking awesome.
I never told that story to you.
I don't remember that, no.
Oh my God, yeah. You have any particular memories of the San Mateo County Fair?
Vague ones. I've got one where again I like doing the game things. I was frugal as a kid, and my parents were frugal as a kid, which is where I got it from. But I would like the game things because it always give you the chance of actually coming home with something. And I think it was the horse race game where you're shooting the water into the target, and the more accurate you are, the more that your horse runs. And I happened to win, and they gave me this stupid little like I don't know. It's like a it's not a Snoopy dog. It's like a basset hound, some sort of a piggyback thing made of plastic. I still have it, man. It's like filled with quarters, like 1976 quarters, because I used to collect those, and it's I still have it. Ugly thing as hell, but that's the only thing I think I've ever ever won from that fair. And I also remember them having days where you could buy a band. It was like this yellow band, and you get to ride all the rides for like $4 or $5 or something. And I remember doing that one year, and that was really special.
I did that once too, and I went with my sister and her friend Michelle. And we went to the fairgrounds. It was a super hot day, um, and dumb me decides to drink a large orange soda. I run into a buddy of mine from elementary school, middle school, I forget what, and we go on. We decide, hey, let's go on this ride together, and it was they call it different things. It's the tarantula, whatever, where there's like a main hub. There are, legs out of it, and you're on this thing, and it kind of spins around and everything. We went on that, and because it was really hot, and I had just drank this giant orange soda, and because the carnies didn't care, the guy left us on the ride for much, much longer than you're supposed to. I'm having a good time, then I'm not having a good time. And I'm yelling at the guy, you need to stop this. You need to stop this. Doesn't care, doesn't think about anything. I know it went longer. And I'm just like, finally, I'm like, I'm done. I threw up all over.
Oh
Your
man.
buddy, when the thing was like, get me out of here. This dude threw up all over me. And I'm just like, oh man. So yeah, that was another one of my memories from the not a good one from the San Mateo County Fair. They had some good music acts too. Did you ever go see any of the music?
Not in the 80s. I did go and see 80s acts. I remember seeing Cheap Trick there, but that wasn't in the 80s. And I know Night Ranger played there a few times, but for whatever reason, I never went.
Hmm. I saw Blue Oyster Cult. That might have been in the 80s or just start of the 90s. Not that impressed by it. And the one act I know I saw in the 80s was Steel Breeze.
Right.
One hit wonders with You Don't Want Me Anymore. And they actually played two sets, and I stayed and watched both of them. I remember the guy, the lead guitar player, had a white mockingbird. And yeah, I thought that was a super cool guitar. And being a musician or aspiring musician, especially at that time, I was like, I got to watch this again. So definitely remember that one. That was a good one. You would have had a good time. How you were there, I will never know.
Yeah, for whatever reason, back in the 80s, I didn't do the music stuff too much. I don't remember actually watching any act there at
You,
all in the
well,
80s.
you never went to concerts really until the mid to late '80s, right?
That's true. The
Yeah.
first
So,
time I went to a concert was in 86, so.
yeah. So that might have been part of it. So let's move on from fairs. And the other thing that was amazing about California, especially in the '80s, is the amount of amusement parks that we had access to. Northern California, Southern California. My family, my father and mother were terrified of flying, so we really didn't fly. I don't think I flew until I went to Hawaii with my grandmother and my aunt in my sophomore year of high school. That was my first time on a plane. So we drove everywhere. We were National Lampoon's Vacation and the wood paneled station wagon and going and in the heat and all that stuff. That's what we did. That's what my family did, and that's why I have so many fond memories of these places. Um, One of the places, and I don't know why I thought of this recently, but I did, and of course I researched it. There is a place in Irvine I remember going to in the late 70s and early 80s called Lion Country Safari. Have you ever heard of Lion Country Safari?
No.
This is how jacked up we were in the 80s. Somebody thinks this is a great idea. We'll put you in your cars. And mind you, this is the 80s, so it's not like there's AC. Irvine, Southern California, hot as hell. Drive through basically a zoo, and the animals, a lot of them are loose,
Oh, wow.
including lions. Okay, you're driving through, like, what could possibly go wrong?
Wow.
Yeah. And they even said, I was reading the brochure, the ad or whatever, because I was doing some research. I'm like, this wasn't just some weird memory. It actually was true. And apparently they have one in Florida that still goes. I don't think they do it quite that way. But when did it went from 1970 to 1984 in Irvine, and you drive through and it would say, hey, by the way, a lion might jump on your car. Try explaining that, how you got that dent. Like, huh? And I remember we'd be through there and we'd be dying in the heat. It was so freaking hot. It's Southern California in the summer. We can't roll down the windows because a lion might come in and attack us.
Yeah, there
And
seems to
this
be a
was
flaw there.
entertainment.
There seems to be a flaw with the business plan there. Do you know why it stopped?
I think it stopped because there was just, I think they were losing money and it eventually just went under. I had always heard this urban legend and I can't find anything about it. So I don't know if it happened in Irvine or the one in Florida. I guess they had a couple of these back in those days. Um, I can't find anything about it, or I couldn't prior to this. But the urban legend we had always heard is the family was going through, cracked their windows open a little bit. A lion yanked down the window and kind of mauled some of the people. I mean, didn't kill them, but messed them up pretty good. I haven't been able to find out anything about that. I did find out in the 80s, one at the one in Irvine, a hippopotamus got loose. And the hippopotamus was gone for 19 days.
Oh my gosh.
How do you not find a hippopotamus? And unfortunately, they killed the hippopotamus. They probably didn't mean to, but I guess the amount of tranquilizers, they probably didn't know what they were supposed to give and
Mm.
died as a result. And sadly, she was 5 months pregnant.
Oh,
So a
wow.
little tragic there. But again, how you don't find a hippopotamus for 19 days, like that didn't stick out. But yeah, so Lion Country Safari was one of those crazy things you're thinking like that could never have happened, and of course it did for us in the 80s. And I'm by your the way you're looking at me, you never got to experience it. I'm not gonna lie, part of it was pretty cool. You'd be driving through and there's a lion walking by you. They also had giraffes, they had rhinos, they had elephants. Some of them, I think the giraffes could, put their necks down, but some of them were kind of quarantined off, but not the lions. The lions could roam a little bit more freely in a certain area. And yes, they could go up on your car. And I remember advertisements where they showed, a lion laying across somebody's car, and they said, if a lion gets on your car, you have to stop. Well, no one can go around you either. So now you're
Oh my
not
gosh.
taking son waiting for a lion. You can't honk your horn like, oh, let's piss off a lion. Something that would have only happened in the damn 80s. My God. I can't, something like this would never in a million years. And maybe that's one of those things for the better.
Do you remember if they had the rhinos running loose? Because that's a little scary too, man. Those things can pierce your
I
your car with their horn.
no, I don't remember if you could just see them, but they didn't have access to the cars or not. I only remember that the giraffe. I don't remember if a giraffe could come up to you, and you'd be like, "Well, geez, giraffes and lions." No, lions are scared to death of giraffes. A giraffe would kill a lion with one kick, and a giraffe can kick in any direction. They're pretty badass. You're like giraffe? No, they're badasses. And they could kick with like a ton of force,
Mm.
which would easily take out a lion, a 400, 500 pound lion, no problem, with one blow. But I don't remember. I don't think the rhinos did. I don't think the giraffes, like I said, I think they had enough access. So they put their heads down and buy the car. But I remember that the lions could, and I got to do some more research on that place because it just sounds like some bizarre happening that I don't quite remember, but it happened
Wow, that's a really good one. Yeah, I'd not heard of that place.
in Irvine. So, did you have a amusement park to go to in the '80s for you?
Um, wasn't a go-to, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about it because it's practically in our backyard. Marine World, Africa, USA. That was in Redwood City. It was, I don't know what, 5, 6 exits away from where we live on 101. And I remember going there a lot. My parents really liking to go there, especially my dad. He was always amazed about, how they were able to train the animals and get them to do exactly what they were supposed to do, and with the whales and yeah, just I remember going there quite a bit. I remember going there with Craig Childers one year, and probably in the very early '80s, maybe 1980 actually. And again, it was just sort of neat. That was just this sort of world class amusement park that was just right there. Not very far from our homes. And yeah, I remember going there quite a bit.
Yeah, we had at one point we had season passes for it. I remember, and my dad used
Nice.
to get home at a pretty decent hour, and every now and then he'd, tell us, "Hey, I'm gonna come home, and when I come home, be ready. We're gonna go to Marine World." And we get a couple hours in Marine World, whatever. To this day, I don't. There's so much we forget as we're older. I still remember the names of the killer whales. Do you remember them?
I want to say that one was Shamu.
No, that was
No.
That was SeaWorld in San
Oh,
Diego. That
SeaWorld.
was kind
Okay.
of famous one. No, Nepo and Yaka. Why I
Yaka. I
remember
remember
that, I
Yaka.
will never. Don't know. But I was actually there. God, it had to be. This is probably close. This is probably more the late '70s. I remember going there, and they had a killer whale show, and they had changed it to make it look very icy and everything. And and they announced why it looked so different was they were actually filming the movie Orca there with Nepo and Yaka as the stars of the movie Orca with I think it was Richard Harris, Bo Derek. The first time you saw Bo Derek, spoiler alert, she gets her leg bit off in the movie. Um, cool Jaws ripoff movie, kind of really sad at the end, but a good movie. Did you ever ride the animals?
I was just gonna ask you the same thing, man. That's one of my big regrets is I never rode one of the elephants.
Well, you had two choices. You could ride an elephant or you could ride a camel.
Right.
And I rode both several times. And again, it's not '80s but '70s. I don't know if you remember, they used to have on display the costume that they used for the elephants that was actually in the original Star Wars movie. Do you remember that?
Oh, no, I don't remember that.
You don't remember that? Yeah, it was. They would have them on display. Those Some of the elephants from Marine World were used in the original Star Wars, so they had that displayed. I think it was in the scene with the Jawas. Remember in
Hmm.
the desert, they had dressed them up to look like foreign creatures. We didn't have CGI back then, so we threw things on elephants. And yeah, they used to have that on display. I was a huge fan too of the ski show, water
My
ski
favorite.
show.
My favorite too.
I loved that water ski show. That was amazing. And I used to be there like taking, pictures of it and everything else. I know I have to have some pictures of the water ski show somewhere. That was a big one for me. Do you remember right before they closed the water slides?
I do. I do. I was actually gonna ask if you wanted to talk about a, certain story that a certain close friend of ours who managed, I think, that part of the park and bought a certain color of bathing suit for
Go
for the
ahead
folks that worked
because
it.
I'm not remembering this apparently as well as you.
Okay, but let's talk about the water slides. I'll sort of come back to that.
Did you ever
But
go to them?
I didn't, man. I didn't, and I wanted to. I don't know why I never did. And you're right; it was like towards the tail end there. I want to say they had them for maybe 2, 3 years, and then not.
I remember going to them. I used to think that was the coolest thing in the world because those were the first. That was the first time I had ever experienced a water slide, so it was amazing for me. And I will never forget. You know, there was this one time this young lady came down, and being the horny teenager that I was, she came out, and her one-piece bathing suit was completely see-through. And I'm sure if I wasn't already in full scale puberty, she pushed me off the edge, and I thank her for that. It's like one of those rare things. Like she walked out of there, and I'm just like, it must have been like one of those cartoons where the eyes just shoot out, and yeah, wow, I remember that young lady. I'm sure she's an old lady now, but like us old men. But wow, thank her for that. Good
Well,
choice. But please continue with your story.
that nicely dovetails into the story that I'm about to say. So our mutual friend Mark Spielman, he used to manage I guess the area there with the water slides, and he was the one that was in charge of selecting the swimsuit attire that the employees would wear. And he didn't think about it, but he selected white. So I'm wondering if there's some some correlation between your story and my story.
So to be fair, he knew what he was doing.
Oh,
If
he did.
you remember, he was my roommate, so I had heard this story. Now that you're talking about it, I'm remembering. He knew what he was doing, and he told me that the girls see it, and they're like, "Oh my god!" Like the first time they got wet, they're like completely see through, and he's like, "I never thought of that. Who would have? I didn't know. Hmm. Well, I guess we're gonna have to order new ones." Like, I'll get right on that. And something tells me Mark didn't exactly push to get the new bathing suits for the ladies, but yeah, that was my roommate. So God bless him
That's
for that.
absolutely,
He
that's
had
hilarious.
another experience he told me about when he worked was security there where they had a guy in the parks that was on PCP. And if you know anything about PCP, it gives you the strength of, a lot of men, you're impervious to pain. And he said he grabbed the guy with one arm. And of course, guess the guy has to be by the killer whales. And he said he just grabbed his arm. The guy threw his arm like, a comic book character and threw him right into the killer whale tank.
Oh my
And one
gosh.
of the killer whales came up to him, wasn't aggressive at all, was just kind of curious, like looking at him. And, you know, but he goes, you know what, I'll stick with this killer whale over this guy. This killer whale seems safer. So that was his experience in the killer whale tank.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, crazy stuff. Um, I don't, I don't know if you ever went there. Like I said, we didn't fly, so my family, station wagon, whatever. One of the places we used to always go in the 80s, and I loved it. And I even when I moved out here, I think it was still open. I don't know exactly what year it closed, but I remember when I came out here, to live, Nancy and I went there, and I'm talking about Movie Land Wax Museum in Buena Park.
Mhm.
Do you ever go there?
No.
No. So I don't know what it was about it. It just that place fascinated me. It was so well done. They had all these different scenes, and of course, they didn't. By the end, they didn't really keep up with it, right? Because they had stuff like Wizard of Oz or Casablanca. Star Trek and things like that, and they, singing in the rain. But there was just something about that place. I always enjoyed it. It felt so magical. And I talked about this on another episode, but most people wouldn't have watched it anyway. So, for a short period, they had this thing called the Black Box. And for years, I didn't remember even where it was located. And I found out it was at Movieland Wax Museum. And for whatever reason, I think my sister and I, being teenagers, probably not enjoying hanging out with mom and dad as much as we did. So our parents let us each bring a friend. I think my sister brought her friend Melissa, and I brought my buddy Bill. And we went to Movieland Wax Museum, and we went to this thing called the Black Box. I don't know if you had to pay extra for it back in those days, or was a just a part of the tour, and you could decide to go into it or not, or part of the attraction. But you went in, and I'll never forget this. They basically put you in the scenes of three horror movies. And the first one was a scene from the original Halloween. So they're talking, and all of a sudden the doors close, and they make it look like it's, all of a sudden it's night, and there's thunder and lightning outside, and you start to hear the John Carpenter Halloween music come in. Lights go off, the bed flips over, and it had the tombstone, and the person's throat was slit, and somebody fell out of the closet door opened up, and someone fell down, was also killed. I think that was it, or maybe it was the door opened and they were killed. So pretty intense, right? The next scene you go to was Altered States, which is not quite iconic as some of the other movies. And I think the guy was trying to get out. I've never seen Altered States, but he was like trying to get out of this water trap thing. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. And then the last was like a scene. I don't know if it was supposed to be Alien. It probably was Alien, because I don't know if Aliens had come out yet by that time. But it was like, you had the alien, it was like a spaceship scene, and things looked like it had dripped some of the blood of the alien. And then they had people that probably had like alien hands, and you probably were just behind the door, and they would grab at your legs. And oh my God, they grabbed my sister's friend Melissa. I thought she was going to have a freaking heart attack. It was awesome. It was so much fun. I laughed my ass off at that. But yeah, so Movieland Wax Museum, man, that was just such a cool place, and never to be repeated. And I'm glad I got to go back there. Probably in the early 2000s, it was still going. Sad to see, and for a long time they even still kept the sign up. And I think only within the last couple of years they've finally removed the sign. As I remember driving by and going, "Oh my God, we got to stop! I just need a photo of that sign." So that was a really cool place. I don't know if you'd call it an amusement park as such, but it amused the hell out of me.
I think that's such a unique thing for a wax museum, right? To have sort of this haunted house element to it. I've never heard of that, man. You go to a wax museum, you just look at wax figurines, and that's what your price of admission is. To have that extra thing of being able to go in there and experience this sort of haunted house thing, like three different ones, that's really, really cool. Really cool.
It really was, and I don't know why it didn't last. For the longest time, I couldn't find anything about it. I didn't know where it existed. Like I said, this was probably like 1980. Geez, it was probably like 82, 83 that we were out there. If I was, friends with Bill, and that's who went. Um, but yeah, it's just, and then when I found out it was part of Movie Land, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So why it didn't continue or not, I don't know. But that was a neat place. And if you didn't see the earlier episode, I'll retell this story. When I was younger, when I was this probably was in the 70s. As little kids, we like to get further ahead of our parents, and everything's cool, but what's next? What's next? And they had a historical um, representation of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. I was not a churchgoer. My parents weren't churchgoers. So I see this and I'm like, oh my God, I got to tell my parents about this. And I'm running through this place to run back to where they were, yelling, Mom, Dad, you got to see this. They have a guy nailed to an X. Probably offended a few people that day. Didn't mean to, but I'm sorry. But I didn't know. But yeah, so yeah, my parents were like, whose kid is this? Um, Usually it's supposed to be the parents that are the embarrassment to the kids. I think it was the exact opposite with my family. I was definitely the embarrassment. Once again, my mom, as my mom would, like, whose kid's this with this? Excuse me, boy, why are you running up on me like this? So,
Are you lost?
yeah, are you lost, little boy? Let's find your parents that don't teach you about Jesus and the man nailed to an X. So, um, I think we're gonna be running out of time, man. This was fun, but we gotta throw this in because it's gonna be closing soon. Um, I remember it as Great America, Marriott's Great America, or Paramount's Great America in the '90s in Santa Clara, and sadly, like everything else, it's valuable land, and they're gonna close it. Were you a big fan of Great America and whatever form that took?
Yeah, yeah, that was one that I was gonna try and slip in as well. Great America definitely went there as a very young adult with friends, and went there as a kid too. But my more memorable times was at more of as a young adult with friends and stuff, just sort of bumming around and going on the rides and doing what you do at a Great America.
I was researching Great America. I was shocked at how many deaths they've had there.
Really, I know they've had a
Um,
few.
they've had quite a few. And I remember reading this. I don't know if it was '80s or '90s, where one of this guy lost his hat, jumped over the fence that he wasn't supposed to jump over to retrieve it. Some guy goes by with his legs dangling on the coaster, kicks him in the head, and kills him.
I
A
remember that.
couple boys in the '80s jumped off the log ride. Why I don't know. One got killed, one got seriously injured, and then there was one that was a drop. And I guess the kid wasn't big enough, and he slipped right through his harness. It was still locked in, and he slipped right through it, and plunged
Wow.
to his death. And I think an electrician died there too. So it's kind of a deadly park. Um,
I remember that one that you're talking about where the guy got kicked in the head.
yeah.
I can't remember the name of the ride, but it was like right at the bottom of this loop, and
Was
I
it
remember
Willard's
going there like we.
Wizard?
No, Willard's Wizard was actually the first one that I remember them having a fatality on.
Okay.
That was probably their tamest coaster, Willard's Wizard.
Yeah. And I remember the huge IMAX. I remember that was the first time I saw an IMAX. Do you remember seeing their IMAX?
I think I do. Yeah,
They
yeah, I
showed
do. It was.
yeah, they showed some sort of nature thing or whatever. And I remember just being blown away. And that IMAX, I don't know if it was because of my age or because I had never seen one before, but to me it seemed like 8 stories at that time. It was humongous. I'm sure it wasn't, but at that time that's what it appeared to be for me. And I remember that IMAX just blowing my mind.
Yeah, yeah. I want to say that it sort of gave you that 3D effect. 'Cause I remember sort of flinching in certain scenes where somebody's like coming from the side or something's happening from the side and you move out of the way. And I do remember that.
We need to go there before they close. We gotta have one last run. I remember going for when it was Paramount's and they used to name everything after Paramount movies. I remember going there as a kid. We even if we go and don't do a damn thing, because I know I'm not gonna get you on a roller coaster. Can get you on a roller coaster in your 20s. I don't think it's gonna happen in your 50s.
I've gone on a few of them there actually.
Really?
The big wooden one that they had, the Grizzly, although I probably wouldn't do it now because it's very rough on your back.
Yeah. Oh, so it was for roller coasters, you just wouldn't go on the ones that would go upside down, right?
Yeah, yeah. I eventually did go on one that did a corkscrew and it wasn't as bad as I thought. But yeah, that was my criteria. If it went upside down, I wouldn't go on it.
You went on one. How long ago was that?
Oh, quite a few years ago, long
Okay.
time ago,
Okay.
just
Maybe
once.
20s, 30s.
Maybe 30s.
Okay. Look at you, you badass. I remember having to beg you to go on the Tower of Terror in Florida, but that's not 80s reference, and that's definitely another time. Do you know they also filmed Beverly Hills Cop 3 there?
I knew that one of the Beverly Hills Cops had scenes there. I didn't know which one, but I do remember actually watching the movie and going, "Hey, that's the entrance of Great America. I recognize that place." So
Yeah.
yeah,
Not a very good movie. I think they they for whatever reason, I think like the prior Eddie Murphy movie had kind of flopped, so they're like, we'll do Beverly Hills Cop 3 and we're gonna cut the budget in half. So maybe that explains the quality. But yeah, I do remember watching that and thinking kind of cool, like, oh man, I've been on that, I've done that, you
yeah.
know. Same with well, we never got to Universal Studios. We ran out of time, but one of the great 80s flicks that nobody remembers is Don Adams and the Nude Bomb.
I
So
don't remember that. Not by title anyway.
it was basically it was the Get Smart movie, and it was called the Nude Bomb. I think is it Sylvia Crystal was in it. That's probably why I watched it. The great thespian that she is. But yeah, they film. It's kind of cool to go back and watch that one too because that took place in the '80s and they filmed at Universal Studios. So the way the trams looked and everything else, and so many of those scenes that no longer exist in that park anymore are available to see. I wish we had time to talk about that, but I know you and I have that commonality of Great America, so it seemed more important to bring that one up.
Definitely. And as the time's ticking here, this has nothing to do with 80s, but I have to mention this here for documentation. It was a rather special day a couple of days ago there for you, John, wasn't it?
I don't remember what you're talking about.
I remember a certain Mr. John Antonelli retiring from the LAPD after 20 years of service. Thank you very, very much. And John, I just wanted to say congratulations to you. So, so happy for you. Very proud of you and what you've done. And couldn't happen to a nicer guy, man. Very, very happy. And that probably explains why you have this big grin on your face right now.
No, it's because my beautiful girl, my new doggy, is sitting next to me, being incredibly beautiful and incredibly quiet while we film this time. But thank you. No, it was a very surreal day. It was a very special day to have so many people come out to wish me well in retirement. It was a really touching experience. They did a video montage. They did a helicopter flyover for me announcing my retirement. Super, super special day. And they asked me to make a speech, and I was still torn up by the video tribute. And I think what I got out, and it's true in any walk of life, not just my career, it's any walk of life. The best any of us can hope to do is really just do our best and hope we influence some lives and make a positive impact on people. And that's what I hope I did in my career. That's what I hope I'll continue to do in the rest of my life. And you know, that's if we're able to do that, we've lived a pretty great life. So that's something we should all strive for, right, girl? Yeah, my girl. Um, but thank you tonight, Brian Adams, Joan Jett, baby. Keep
Awesome,
it in the
man.
80s. Anyway, I think we better end it before we run out of time. As always, thank you guys for watching. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Can you see my beauty?
I can see her. Look at her. Look at that face.
Yeah, I love this girl. Um, Adopt, don't shop. This is a rescue. What an amazing girl. Lou, take us out, brother.
Peace out.
Thank you guys.